De nou, benvinguts i benvingudes. Si voleu anar prenent asiento de nou, posant-vos còmodes i còmodes, perquè ara començarà la última sessió del primer dia de Euphonic Pro. You can get yourselves comfortable, sit down, because we are going just to start the last session of the first day of Euphonic Pro. So, welcome again. And I am in good company because we are going to make some kind of a panel presentation. Peace. Thank you very much. Like a panel conversation in which we are going to get acquainted with different projects that have to do with talent and many times with recognizing and giving opportunities to emerging talent. It's called Talent Hunter. And we are going to say hello to Matthew Lyons from the Kitchen New York, to Nadine Roestenburg from Eindhoven in the Netherlands, and somewhere out there in Issy-les-Moulineaux, France, Clément Thibault. Hello, and please,
Hi.
Applause for all of them. So, hello, Clément.
Hi, thanks a lot for the invitation.
Happy that you can join us, even if remotely. So, without further ado, let's start with knowing a little bit more about a space in New York that's been running since the early 70s. That's a long time ago. That space you probably know of. It's called The Kitchen, and it has been key in supporting, I would say, avant-garde, experimental, adventurous types of art across all disciplines and all the connections that we can establish between all disciplines. And so I'm going to give the word to Matthew so we can know a little bit more about the kitchen and what's happening in there now. So welcome, Matthew.
Check, check, check. Can you hear me? Yes? No? Test? That good? Okay, now I hear myself. Yeah, let's see. Can I go back? Yeah. So thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here at Euphonic and in the region. I was meant to be here in the summer of 2020, so this is a bit of a pandemic redo, so I'm very happy to have made it here after all. I'm a curator at The Kitchen in New York. It was founded in 1971, and I've been developing projects there for many years now, since 2005. The Kitchen was founded by European immigrants. Stena and Woody Vasulka are the usual people who are named as the founders of The Kitchen. This was one of their texts when The Kitchen was founded. I'm not sure if you can read it from afar. But it was, Stena was from Iceland. Woody is from what was then Czechoslovakia. Woody is his nickname. His original name was Bohuslav Vasulka. He was studying film and television in Prague. They met in Prague and emigrated to New York in the mid-60s. And from that time until around 1971, when The Kitchen was founded, they were at the center of a collective of artists who were doing these early experiments with media and sound, manipulating television image and manipulating sound, audio through technology. And so finally, by the time the 70s rolled around, it became time to find a space. And this was the first space of The Kitchen. It's called The Kitchen because this space was in what had been an old grand hotel, and many different kinds of art activities were given different rooms, and these artists were given the kitchen. So this space had been the kitchen of the hotel. And they were here for only 2 years, until 1973. Let's see. So these are some of the original founders. On your left is Dmitry Devyatkin. Next to him is Woody holding a camera. Next to him is Rhys Chatham, who was the music curator at 2 points in the 70s and the early 80s, who is now active living in France. And on the end is Stena. Woody passed away in 2019. Stena is still with us. This man was Sridhar Bapat, who was, there's been a lot of research about his activity more recently. He was kind of forgotten about for a while. He was one of these key persons who was the person who sorted out the actual technology of how to do the projects that the artist dreamed up. As we all know, the technicians are the key people who make things happen, and so he was the one who could figure out how to manipulate the television sets to do what they wanted to do. He was also very active with Charlotte Moorman, who you may know as the cellist, who did a lot of famous collaborations with Nabjune Pike. There's those famous images of her playing 3 television sets as a cello. She organized a thing called the New York Avant-Garde Festival with Sridhar. And when I was looking for images, I realized that he's wearing a t-shirt for this. The first Video Women's Festival at the Kitchen which is 1972, 1973, I'm not sure. But there's amazing names there and amazing just projects, titles, and it just gives a sense of the kinds of activities that were going on in this time when the collective spirit of the organization, the end of the hippie era, was moving into this more technological, mediatized era. Here are some other archival images of the different kinds of things that were going on. Let's see. Yeah. Then in 1973, they moved to a new space, a loft space in Soho. This is the building, and this is the space. They were here through the rest of the 70s and into the early 80s, and this was the time when the mission of the organization really exploded to include all of the different disciplines that we cover now. So for a long time, it was the Kitchen Center for video, music, dance, performance, film, and literature. These days, as Antònia said, we tend just to say experimental and avant-garde practices and try not to itemize all the disciplines in the same way. Then I should say I'm going to rush through this history through space and architecture for reasons which will become very clear very soon. So then in the middle of the 80s, they moved to this building, which we currently occupy. We own this building. It's in West Chelsea, which is now a gallery district, but it was a kind of deserted, non-cultural neighborhood when we moved there in 1986. This photo was probably taken around then. This is kind of what it looks like today. Although there are much bigger buildings now. This is probably a 10-year-old photograph. Because we're in the process of renovating this building. So this is a drawing of what the building will look like, hopefully in 2 years. Let's pray. A lot of this work was meant to happen during the pandemic. So that project was put on pause, and we started to move out actually last week, and the actual renovation will begin next month. But you can kind of see that there's, on the ground floor, there's a black box performance space. Above that will be office space, and then above that will be a more gallery kind of white cube environment. And then there's roof activity up there, which is totally new. Currently there's nothing on the roof. So the theater space will probably change the least, and all the other spaces will change quite a bit. And in particular, the non-public spaces, all of the spaces that the artists use. So this building is about 100 years old. It was originally built as an ice warehouse to store ice. And it was renovated in the 70s to become a film and television studio. Then another arts organization owned it, and then we took it over. And we didn't do much to it. So it really needs to be brought into the 21st century with connectivity and accessibility and wiring and all that kind of stuff. So it's a big project, about $24 million, something like this. And then I just wanted to give a sense of a couple of projects that I've done in the last year to give a sense. They're all quite different, and so I think it shows a little bit of a nice range of the kinds of things that I develop with artists. So connecting to the architecture, this is a view into the theater space where an artist called Alan Ruiz did an exhibition a year ago. He's an artist from Mexico who lives in New York. He's concerned with the social, political implications of built space. So this was the installation that looks a little bit like a construction site, or that deals a lot with reflectivity of space and glass. But actually the center of this exhibition and this whole project was a lease agreement between the artist, Alan Ruiz, and the organization, whereby we leased to Alan the air rights, the development air rights that we have in our plot of land for 1 year, for $1 a month for 1 year. Air rights are these things that are very present in New York real estate and development. They also exist in many other cities around the world. It has to do with, especially in New York and Manhattan, which is an island, the only way to expand and develop is to go up. So there's a lot of control about how high you can build new buildings, how high you can add to buildings. And it's these air rights are legal entities that can also be traded to your neighbors. So the kitchen at 2 points in the last 20 years sold some of our air rights to neighboring developers, which is why I mentioned that actually now we are surrounded by much higher residential luxury buildings. So Alan is interested in this kind of commodification of natural resources like air. The actual historical precedents go back about 500 years to England, where they started to control windows and access to light before electricity and lighting. These are some more views. Some of the architectural forms that you see echo some of the building that's across the street. This is looking out across the street to other luxury development that have gone on. So he's interested in the kind of uneasy relationship that art and the art industry has with gentrification, real estate speculation, that kind of thing. As we know, artists are often the first to enter neighborhoods that are about to undergo rapid change. And yeah, this photo I think gives a sense of the experience of being in this space, because it was a lot about passing through boundaries, through space. There was a bit of a sense that you can walk through walls. I'm going to go quickly. Next. This is an artist called Sophia Cleary, who did a performance about a year ago. I had worked with her first in a really different project. She was part of a feminist punk band for 2 women called Penis. But in more recent years, she's been working in the form of stand-up comedy. And so coming out of the pandemic, when we were used to all this telepresence of Zoom and all these ways of connecting, she wanted to come back to the theater and investigate how the actual apparatus of theater can support intimacy. Does it support intimacy or not? And the way that she did that was performing her stand-up comedy set in a theater, a full theater, with our lights and sound and so forth, but for one person at a time. So we did this, we were only able to do it about 8 times. And the person was aware that they would be the only person there, but they didn't really know much more about, other than that it was something connected to stand-up comedy. The performance was called One and Only. And she attempted to develop some kind of intimate relationship with this person over the course of 1 hour, being very vulnerable, asking the person to be vulnerable, to get up on stage and to tell their own narrative in some way. And then in the middle of the performance, she went live on the kitchen's Instagram So the general public who follow us on Instagram could get a sense of the performance. So they did this at least 8 times, because I think they also went live a few times in rehearsal. And then as a kind of celebration to release the tension that obviously built up between the two people, she allowed them kind of behind the scenes, and there was a kind of release of a dance moment with her and the other performer, where Sophia learned the choreography at the end of this Claire Denis movie called Beau Travail, where the main character ends up in a discotheque and does this kind of wild dance, which she taught herself. And that gives a sense of that. Yeah. And then the final project that I wanted to mention was a music project with this artist called Joy Guidry, who is a very young artist that I knew before the pandemic, but I got to know a lot during the pandemic. They were very active about talking about their place in classical music. As a Black trans person, they play the bassoon and compose and improvise. And during, let's see, in 2020, they released their first album called Darkness is the Myth. That's their old name. And then this year, their more recent album came out. And so last November, we were able to present a concert evening where they presented some of their own compositions and compositions that they commissioned by other composers. But in between all of those musical moments, there was a very big storytelling element where they talked about a lot about their identity and coming to terms with their identity as a Black trans person, and dealing with a lot of mental health issues and issues around body positivity. So mostly performed solo bassoon. They also played the theremin. As you can see, there's a drummer behind them also on some of the pieces. He's also a composer, a Swiss artist named Jesse Cox, who lives in New York. So this is Joy telling their story. So in between each composition, they really talk about the different issues that they're dealing with in their music practice. That's the theremin to the left there, including undressing and dealing with body positivity and kind of fat phobia. So it's dealing with a lot of personal trauma, but I wanted to include this picture from the bow, where they take their bows to show that it actually was quite positive. In the end, they chose this name Joy, and they talk about that at the end of their performance, is how they selected that new name for themselves. Yeah, so this is the future of the kitchen in about 2 years. And yeah, I hope you will get to visit it one day when it's open.
It will be an amazing excuse to visit New York.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Like, why are you going to New York? I just have to see the new kitchen. That's
Yeah.
it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You presented I think that very good examples about like the variety of disciplines, from installation to performance to music, and most probably all the entanglements between the three of them and more. Thank you very much, Matthew. And now we are going to introduce Nadine Roestenburg. How can I say your name? Roestenburg?
I think it's really difficult for you, but it's Roestenburg.
Roestenburg.
I sometimes say roasty burger.
If
But
it's
whatever.
roasty burger, it's Roestenburg.
Yeah, just.
My Dutch is getting better also, one name at a time.
Yeah, very good.
Yes, and Nadine, she's a curator, researcher in the field of technology, art, culture, society. She works in a variety of projects, being one of them a festival called Stripe, which happens in Eindhoven since, I think, 2006,
Yes.
but I may be mistaken. And at the festival also, lots of disciplines cross, even those that are not specifically artistic. There are people from the world of philosophy, journalism, science, etc., etc., etc. So let's know a little bit more the work of Nadine
Thank
at
you.
Stripe and beyond.
Thank you, Antònia, for the invitation. And nice to meet you all here. So let me quickly introduce you. Meet to you. I'm Nadine Roestenburg. I studied graphic design and cultural studies, and I work at a festival, but also in art school at Art Code in Tilburg, a city in the south of the Netherlands. And all my work is centered around exploring what new technologies, what we can learn from by the work of artists. So I want to understand the world that we live in a bit better. And I also wrote a book once. It's only in Dutch, still waiting for someone to translate it, from meme to mainstream on digital arts and culture. And next to my work in art school, I work at Strijp, as Antònia mentioned, and I co-create the exhibition and the scenarios program, which is the in-depth program, the former conference. So Strijp is a cultural organization that explores the relationship between art, technology, and society. And we want to do this with a critical, optimistic attitude. So we don't want to focus on the dystopian future scenarios. And we are not tech optimists like the solutionists. So we want to engage with art and technology in a critical, optimistic way, which is really important for us. And we do this together with the public, artists, designers, media makers, and thinkers. And in the background, you will see some impressions of work of artists. That this one, for instance, from Rundel and Seidel. And if you want to know more about it, please let me know, because I cannot dive into all the artworks now. And our program is a yearly festival, which is the biggest events, but throughout the year we also organize several workshops, educational programs, Strijp scenarios, and the festival includes an exhibition, educational program, music and performances. And we co-produce a lot of new works with emerging artists. And also one of the ways that we do this is student awards, which I will get back to. So as Antònia mentioned rightly, we were founded in 2006 to make the DNA of Eindhoven, which is the former Philips city, to make that more visual and experiential. And so the idea is that Strijp would stimulate innovation, technology, art and design, just like Dutch Design Week and another festival, Glow. And to attract visitors to the new area that was still undiscovered, as also you mentioned with the kitchen. But from 2022 now, the whole area is gentrified. It's full with, it's like New York. There's only towers to live in, so it's a bit boring. And we decided from 2020 to move back to the inner city because there's a lot of empty shops. It feels a bit like post-capitalistic, and we want to, we thought that's where the magic is needed. So that's where the artists are needed. So we wanted to move back to the inner city, but then Corona obviously happened, so we had to wait a few years. But this year it finally happened, so I'm glad to show you this impression. Yeah, and it's really nice to finally have a physical event again. To tell you a little bit more about how we work, so we work together with a network of curators. So we co-create the events and the exhibition. Antònia is one of our co-curators, and we do this to expand our network. So also to for their expertise, but also for their networks and also for their eyes, because I mean, as you see on top, Ton and I are two very white Dutch people, and we want to extend our network to the other areas of the world and to go beyond our own Western scope. So currently, Ali Islami, Antònia Veka Balikagwa, and Anka Verona Milouet are also part of the curatorial team of the exhibition and also the Skype scenarios. And for the Skype scenarios, which I am the program manager for. I work also together with creative co-creators to experiment with the formats, because we got a little bit bored with like presentation. It's still fun, but we also want to explore new formats. So especially online during COVID. For instance, during Skype Scenario 14, we worked together with Cream on Chrome, and they created a futuristic, speculative news show around the theme of collective, how we can work together, collaborate. The collective, that was the theme of that year, which you see here. So it was an interactive show in which the audience could choose how the news show would develop. You can still watch it online. And last year we did also hybrid events like this one that I co-created together with Ayun Kim, you should see on screen from Korea in an underwater world. And the goal is to talk about the ethics of technology in an experimental way. Another session that I did with Carl McDonald, an American artist, are the cryptotherapy sessions, in which we talk about how NFTs and cryptos actually make us feel and how they have changed our inner world instead of our wallets. And then I want to briefly mention a bit about, when we're talking about talent, about the art for creative technology that we host since, I don't know, actually 5 years, I think. It's an award that's open for all creative technologists, and we have 3 prizes. One for a young talent of 10 grand, and 2 times 20,000 euros. And alongside the budget, we also offer productional guidance for the development, the production, and the presentation. And in 23, the winners will be Hakim Adam Quago and Juan Arturo Garcia. And I'm really happy that we've also reached out of our own bubble. As I also mentioned, we have a lot of educational programs in which we work together with schools from different levels, so from primary education to universities, in which we, together with coaches like professional artists, let youngsters work on an exhibition around the concept that is related to the theme. And as I mentioned, that I'm also working for Fontes University and Art Code. I also initiated the project with the Fontes students, and that are from all disciplines, so from music to performance to design. We launch an open call next week, and they can apply. And this one is focused on experimenting with hybrid online-offline technologies. So these are some of the projects that I want to mention. Lots of new things coming up. We will have a little presentation this fall, but we're already working hard towards April next year. So thank you. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks. Sorry.
Hi, I don't hear you, maybe. I guess we might have a problem. Do you hear me?
I am very sorry. I
Cool.
muted myself, the microphone.
Much better.
So, and the technicians are telling me, you don't have to mute the microphone, we do it for you. Okay, I am so very sorry. So I was saying that we are already running out of time, so we have to run quickly and visit France, teleport ourselves, so we can speak with Clément Thibault, that you already hearing me, I can hear you, and I was going to ask you, first of all, I'm going to introduce you a little bit. He's a curator, art critic. He also works at this exciting intersection of technology, art, culture, society, and he's the artistic director at Le Cup. Have I said this properly? Learning French one night at a time. And I would like you to tell us what it is that you do and what it is that you do at Le Cup and how do you support emerging talent. So, over you.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm quite happy to be with you almost. Well, to tell you, it's been 2 years only I've been working for the Cube, and then there was first the pandemic. So how to maintain the link we have with artists and publics, and then there was the 20 years old of Le Cube, and then a big project I'm going to tell you. The first one is the fact that we are organizing with ENSAD, which is École des Arts Décoratifs in Paris, the next edition of ISEA, the International Symposium on Electronic Arts, that will be in Paris next spring. And also, Le Cube, which was in Issy-les-Moulineaux, is moving to another location in Garges-les-Gonesse, which is more in the north of Paris. To tell you about Garges, the place will be absolutely tremendous, beautiful. It's been constructed the last days. But Garges-les-Gonesse was kind of these towns that were created in France in the 70s, kind of brutalist, modernist places that have been really degenerated, we could say, from subsidies, etc. And now, well, it's a place where maybe culture is not the first priority, but to tell and to ask ourselves, what is art today? How we can create relationship with people, how we can interact in society and in the world. I guess it's really a beautiful place to kind of create this kind of laboratory instead of continuing making the exhibition that's still making in Paris, where people are, well, you talked about the link between gentrification and culture, and that's true that this thing is kind of difficult. So what we do at Le Cube, well, first and foremost, I guess we are showing, producing, helping artists to reflect, we could say in their work, the social mutation that are brought by the digital, and maybe with this idea of not seeing the digital only on, not such as technologies, but really as, we could say, cognitive states, to say, what is interesting for us is to see how technologies not are new, etc., but how they change our perception of the world, the way we construct society, and how we can recreate a relationship that is beneficial, that is positive between artists, between citizens, and between new technology. So the idea is to explore new fields. Some are not so new, we could say, mixed reality, spatial art, nano art, bio art. New thing also as mental art, the use of brain and machine interface. We've making a lot of projects about this these days. For example, exhibiting the last piece by Maurice Benayoun, working with us with artist collective called Mentalista in France, etc. So then the idea, I guess, these new fields are kind of an increased reality for our publics, and maybe what today is different from other days, other times, I guess, is the fact that for people, for citizens, for people that want to express themselves with this kind of tools, we have everything in our hand. I guess it's never been so easy to create, to express oneself, and to have kind of project to have in society. So with the opening of Gare de Gonesse, that will be in next February, there was really deep question about what is our role, what are we doing with art these days, what is our identity in this new territory. And maybe I told myself really that the idea is not to, of course, show people what is culture, etc., this kind of ideas, but give inspiration, create a place that will be a place for transformative experience, give people the will, the ideas to change. And what is kind of what we share, I guess, with Nadine is the fact that what maybe distinguishes Le Cube is a big pole of digital education. For example, to tell you, for the artistic activities of Le Cube, I work with a team of 5 people. For the digital education of Le Cube, we have a team of almost 20 people these days. That's to say, really the idea of showing art and inviting people in prospective background, etc., is to kind of work with schools, work with students, or sometimes with older people to give them a critical mind and also to find what are the benefits of new technology. So it's kind of what we try to do these days. And may be to tell you also a bit about the International Symposium on Electronic Arts, ISEA. I guess everybody knows that even it was in Barcelona in June this year. So the next edition will be in Paris, and we still have a call for project, academic and artistic call of project. The artistic one will be closed in 1 month, almost. It will be the 13th of September, and we'll have really with the title Symbiosis, a big 5 days of academic papers, talks, etc. in Forum des Images, which will be in the center of Paris. And then during all the months of May and June in Paris, we'll have a lot of exhibitions, performances, project talks, etc. that will be everywhere in Paris. So if you want to be part of this adventure, etc., we still are constructing, please be free to send me an email or to interact or to participate to the call for projects. Sorry, I was kind of messy. I guess it's first talk after the holidays.
Since you are remotely, it's okay if it gets messy. We can just go back. We can ask questions, and maybe we can make things like more, I would say, dynamic in a way. And I would like to ask you, and also because our time is running out, because we spent like a little bit more time just presenting. I would like to ask you something that I'm going to ask all of you, and in a way you already responded. You said at Le Cube it's like a place where we make activities for education around technologies, but also it's like a place where you make exhibitions, performances, and these kinds of things. And I would like to ask each of you if you can briefly respond. How can we support emerging talent apart from giving them the space and sometimes the money to make something? But beyond that, especially with people who are sometimes very young, sometimes not so young, but unexperienced at making art. There are people who start late. That happens. What can we do? How can we support that? Just an idea, whatever comes first to mind.
Well, I guess, and this is a place where the works of creators and art critic, I'm sorry, maybe in France, but I guess it's kind of everywhere, has been blurred in a way. We all have to talk. All ideas and innovation and creativity is created. I guess it's really through talks, through the fact of living together, etc. I guess one of the biggest part of my work, instead of all the work I do at Le Cube Curation, etc., is living with artists. A lot of studio visits, and it's not only studio visits to see what you do, see your last project, etc., but it's studio visits to really really talk about the work, the practices, etc. And it's I guess it's a double benefit, because it's a benefit. It benefits for the artist that is thinking about this practice. It's benefiting for us as well, because we're evolving. So I guess exchanges are really the major thing we have to do to help and to help. I don't like the idea, but to interact with emerging artists is a major thing.
Yeah, okay. And I would like to ask the same to Nadine, what we can do, because from the festival with the grants and other projects, this is a way to support emerging artists, but beyond the space and the money, what can we do?
That popped up in my mind is related, but it also because the last Monday we had the kickstart of the new first year students of Art Growth, and they would join a workshop organized by Mu, another art space in Eindhoven, and that is called Making Faults, because I think failure and giving a space to let something fail and support failures is also really important and really hard, because you are a festival and you have to show something to an audience, and if there's nothing, so I think that's also really interesting. But
I have an experience. I have invited a couple of times artists to fail. Like they were inexperienced and they had like kind of ambitious projects. But I said, okay, you take the chance. They are much better now.
Yeah.
So I guess that's something that it makes you grow and learn faster. If you fail straight ahead from the very beginning in front of a lot of people. So and they are happy with it.
And I think the challenge is if you have to present something in 3 days, because we have the exhibition only for 3 days a year. So how can you also guide the audience in, or maybe let the audience also feel in watching? So,
And you, Matthew?
I mean, definitely failure. The giving artists the opportunity to head for failure, to take risks, is the way that I think experimental arts moves forward. So that's definitely a big value that we have at the kitchen. I think maybe one thing I can add that comes to mind is, especially from like my institution, which is over 50 years old, has a kind of international reputation for young artists. This can be quite intimidating. So I think like building human relationships with everyone on the team, not just the curator who's giving an opportunity, but the technicians. And oftentimes if those relations are built in a kind of human way, they can realize what they can ask for, because young artists often don't know how much to ask for. And so, we have the experience a lot of times where technicians will say like, well, maybe you want to try it this way, or do you want to rehearse this much or this much? And, giving this dialogue chance for them to ask for a little bit more, for the technicians to transfer some of their knowledge to the artists who maybe don't know how to work with sound technician, don't have a lot of experience working with light and sound technicians, these kinds of things, how to talk about what they have going on in their mind. That kind of like relationship with all the different aspects of an institution or a festival, I think helps build trust and gives artists a chance to like take those creative risks also.
And one last question that I want to make also each of you. What's interesting now, Clément? What are you excited about? About the different artistic things that are happening in the world, in the universe right now? What's interesting? What should we watch out for?
Well, I was kind of struck by last documenta in Castle, beyond all the controversies that happened, because I guess if we put it in a nutshell, and really it's to be kind of quick, but if we analyze it, what we are showing at the vision of Western art history, we could say that 19th century was a big struggle for beauty. The central idea was beauty in a way, torn between institutional beauty, that's to say politics, etc., and inner beauty, not inner beauty, but individual beauty. Then in the 20th century, the idea was the artists really gain, we could say, this kind of fight in a way. And all that the 20th century was really about the definition of art and the expansion of its borders in a way. It was a totally cool kind of century that it was maybe one of the first times that art was not so linked with religion, with power, with economics, etc. Economics, well, etc. But here, today, there is a big shift about this in the last 20th century, because in an age of multiple crises, and it's even, we could say that the pandemic was not a big thing in a way. Sorry to say that because it was tragic, of course. But then we have the war. Then we are 2 days maybe assisting to the collapse of an economical system that was based on law and extractivist energy, etc. So this day there is kind of an urgency to act, and we are seeing more and more. You know, after kind of beauty in the 19th, kind of definition in the 20th, assisting to art as action and speculation. That's to say, maybe a blurred borders between aesthetics and ethics, and artists are acting more and more in society to create new models of living, new way to interact with our environment, to redefine what is humanity through affinity and not identity in a way, etc., etc. So there is really this idea of acting, and this last documenta with the concept of lumbung, the idea of sharing, etc., and only selecting collectives that were not really creating forms in a way. It was not a documenta where we find a lot of artworks in a way, maybe in spite of Ito style in some few artists. It was really an idea to show the action of artists that are really collaborating within their communities, within what they can do in their background, in their country, in their town, maybe to help people, disabled people, minorities, etc., etc. So I think this shift is kind of ultra big, ultra important, and kind of exciting in a way. Art here is a place of representation, of how do we say it in English, of how we tell the world, but it's shifting more and more toward exemplary action, we could say. I was not too long?
No, a bit long, but you are right. Nadine,
Yeah.
what's exciting out there that we have to keep an eye on?
I actually kind of agree. I'm also really interested in new ways of organizing and collaborating, of working. And I would love to see connections with the digital a bit more, because I thought while I was at Documenta, I was like, okay, I wanted to see how there was not so much like video and digital art, and I was like, okay, I'm also curious how this is going to evolve. So how the world of blockchain NFT is going, this is going to link with the strategies that are shown in, for instance, Documenta of new ways of organizing. So that's what I'm excited to see. New projects at digital and physical when it's about organizations and collaboration. Yeah,
I like that. Matthew, how about you? What's interesting?
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind is like we returned to more arts presentations after the pandemic has calmed down a bit. I mean, one thing that struck me during the pandemic was the way that artists use public space in new ways and exciting ways, and figured out ways to interact with the public without such strict frames around creation. Whether it be like a black box space where you go at 7:30, you'll see something for 70 minutes and then leave and return to your life or something. And I would like to keep some of that openness that we witnessed in going forward, because I think that helps the loosening of the frames around those things, increases different kinds of audiences to engage with art. And then as we continue presenting art in museums and galleries and black box spaces and theaters, that those publics will come into those spaces as well.
So that's it. Thank you very much. Clément, Nadine, Matthew, thank you very much for participating at Autophonic. Please join hands together. Un aplaudiment ben fort Molt fort. Més fort. Encara més fort. Més. We have to make sure that Clément hears the applause. Thank you very much.
Bye.
A paella is waiting for us outside. Ens espera una paella. Moltes gràcies. Hello, goodbye. Goodbye, Clément.
See ya.
Thank you very much.